Hello everyone, Rudros here, and today I have a very special guest who I'm fortunate enough to have met in person. He's a very kind gentleman. I believe we took a selfie together, which was just made my day. It really did. This is another representative for the national competition this year in Final Fantasy TCG. It is the Toolbox himself, Mr. Sam Tuell. Sam, how are you, sir?
Hey there, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so you'll have to set the stage for a little bit for me here because the reason I've got you on today, other than just because I like you and who wouldn't enjoy talking to you, you participated in a store championship this past Sunday, I believe it was. Where was this one located?
So this was in Hiram, Georgia. It's a little bit west of Atlanta, but
Okay,
it's the one of the few ones we had in the southeast this year.
gotcha. Okay, and how many people were at this particular tournament?
Yeah, so we had 20 pre-registers and then four additional show up, so 24 total people.
24. Oh man, I would love to compete in a tournament of that size. Like, it's big enough that there's still, some competition, but not so big that you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta, win out or whatever. That's fantastic. So, I guess I'll bury the lead, or maybe people already know. So you ended up winning the entire tournament, which is why you're on here today. Congratulations. So you are nationals bound now, correct?
Yep. Me and Hunter Nance actually we more or less just split finals. So we actually he had stayed at my place and we were just like, well, we can just leave at this point and sell the cloud together. So we
Oh yeah.
just pretty much didn't even play it out.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to get into the breakdown of the day. So first off, I have to ask about your deck list, and this is another reason I was so happy to have you on because since Opus 12, kind of 10, like I've always been a fan of Warriors of Light. And when the Ferris multi-element came out in 12, I was like, yeah, it's really cool, but it never really reached like the competitive heights. And this set, we got this new wall, we got Refia, but I never saw anyone use in a Warrior of Light build, at least not and have a lot of success. Saw plenty of people, hey, jam them in soirees, right? That's the best place for wool. Put it in this multicolored deck. I was like, well, I guess the Warrior Light dream is dead. No, Sam Tuell says otherwise. So this is very exciting for me. First off, I have to ask, your deck name is called Hello ? Is that a reference to anything, or is it just something you came up with?
Yeah, so there's this person in the community, Brendan Tawa, and he just has a very certain way of entering Discord, and that's what we're referencing there.
Nice. Excellent.
You have to get with just the right tone where you're just like, hello? Just a big inflection at the end.
Oh, that's perfect. So the only thing I could even think of, I was like, is it based on the Adele song? Because she has a song, Hello, It's Me. So that's cool. Hello? Get a Brandon Tower reference. So this is a list that you also took to Florida. Obviously you made some changes since then, but you seem pretty set on it. So before I get into any of the specifics, why Warrior of Light? You could have picked Soiree, you could have picked Win, 13. What is it about Warrior of Light? What did you believe in the strength of it? Is it just you like these characters? Why pick this deck?
So I think most people know I like to play a lot of colors. When I got my Worlds qualification back in 2018, I was playing effectively it was only Earth Wind, but it had Phoenix and Urianger, right? Like similar to JFB's list and stuff. I like playing those kind of multicolor decks. So I like being able to splash in all that kind of stuff and try to figure out like the mechanics and the math on exactly how much of this and how much of that do you need. Last year in the re-raise, I played a Fusoya deck that also tried to, kind of play a lot of different colors and kind of get the most out of that. So I have a lot of experience with stuff like that, and Warrior of Light just kind of lines up with it. Kind of like what you were mentioning before, whereas like, in the past, some Warrior Light stuff was like kind of interesting. Like the Luneth came out like a while ago. That card was kind of interesting, and same thing with Arc. And it's like, well, it's a 2-drop 7k, but with EX, and it could have a bigger upside. But now with like Warrior of Light being an actual card, it just kind of gave you that critical mass of Warrior Lights to really do a lot more with it. I know a lot of people I spoke to before Florida either thought some of the Warrior Light stuff was like a little bit more of a meme, or if they did think it was good, like they didn't believe in Refia, or they didn't believe in whichever part. But really just kind of coming with it all together. And I played a few practice games, honestly, with the Lena. And
Yeah,
she was
White
just
Lena, very
one of
surprising.
Yeah, just a one of, because I was like, oh, it's a warrior light, it's fine. I have a full art. I'll play it in a deck. And it well overperformed, mainly due to combo with the Luna,
Mhm.
and giving that haste so that you can get the
Oh
reanimate on the
yeah.
same turn that you play it. And you can't actually even combo that with Refia, where you can, Luneth, give it haste, the Refia trigger will still be on the stack, let that resolve, then it will untap, it has haste, it can attack and reanimate something in the same turn. And if you
Wow.
reanimate either a Warrior of Light, like a Ferris, you really explode the board, or if you get like a Zidane, then you can attack with that as well. So there are lots of so kind of getting to the other reason I really like playing the deck. There are lots of very interesting and kind of complicated lines that you can go with the deck. I think
That
it
Lena seems a lot stronger when you can use its effect the turn it comes in. Yeah, instead of having to wait a whole turn.
Yeah, and even sometimes twice. I have had a game where I animated a Zidane and then I pulled it untapped with the
Mhm.
Refia, and then I animated a Ferris all in the same turn that I played the Lena. So
Wow, that's
yeah, it's
cool.
like yeah, it's a cool little combo that you can kind of get going. But and you can also search it with Sildra, so obviously a
Yeah.
little bit of strength there. But I think the deck is fairly similar to Soiree. I think it has a little bit higher ceiling and a little bit lower floor. So like Soiree is kind of always going to be good. It's probably the most comparable deck to it.
Hmm.
I do think once Warrior Light sets up and kind of gets its full engine going, a Refia is really, really hard to stop.
Yeah.
So it helps guarantee that you're not getting EX because you're putting their forwards on top of their deck, so that you're getting rid of key forwards and they're gone forever. You're drawing more cards than them usually, except for the Vesvia, but more of our cards say draw one card than theirs, and also really being able to abuse Sildra for consistency and for power, more than a lot of other decks in the format.
Yeah. I the Refia, I saw it a few times just kind of throughout the season on Octagon, things like that. And it was always clearly powerful when you could get it going, when you get that double effect that not only are you drawing a card, you're, removing the forward to wherever you want, but it seemed so difficult to get it to that point. And I just watched so many people struggle with it and fail with it. So that's why, yeah, I kind of wrote it off like, maybe it's just too hard, like, or maybe it's just too much work. But seems like you were able to have success. Was Refia a pretty key part of the deck, or was it like, well, it kind of, when it happened, it was good, but how consistent was she?
So it did usually more line up with closing out games rather than, like being able to get you into a game or do
Mhm.
anything else. You don't want to play it at all during the early game. During the mid game, it's okay because you can like Warrior of Light, just play Refia, and at least be able to get that double ping with the Warrior of
Yeah.
Light because you can 5k attack 5k and kill something and then still also get your attack in. So that's powerful, but obviously the strength of the card comes in when you're at the end of the game where you kind of want to set up to where you can't lose.
Yeah.
And because the deck's very good at being very explosive once you kind of hit the mid game. You can just kind of blink and then all of a sudden you have like four forwards out. So the only thing you're worried about is your opponent playing equally powerful forwards or board wiping you.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
that kind of leads into one of the changes I made between Florida and Georgia was going for the Amaterasu. Because I didn't really like Amaterasu too much in this like very early game,
Yeah.
but when you kind of get to the late game, it was more of just I want to seal off this game. I don't want to get Shantoto'd. I don't
Right.
want to get Marauded. Anything that's kind of answering my board. That's the only time I really was wanting the Amaterasu was just to try to go. I don't care what you have. I've won the game.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, since you brought that up, I want to ask about, a few of these changes you made from Florida. Looks like overall it's pretty consistent. Amaterasu, obviously a big one you put in. Feel like everyone kind of knows that card and what it does. I'm looking at your other summons. Looks like your other summons are mostly consistent. On the backup line, it looks like you did take out the Idolus. I'm guessing, was he originally in there just for the wool? Did he have other uses? Like, I'm assuming you didn't favor him too much since you cut him.
So he was in there originally. One of the main concerns I had with the deck was against 13. Without
Mm,
seeing too much of it in Florida, I was a little less cautious about it. But Idolus' chief reason of originally being in the deck was just so I could get Wool out, because obviously 13 is going to kill you before I get to four
yeah,
backups. So Idolus was there so that I could get out a Wool and do that before I got to four backups, so that I could start using Ferris, Refia,
yeah,
etc. to just kind of control down the board. Because I found a lot of the games where you're trying to control the board with only Hecaton Share or only Shantoto, you're still gonna fall behind because you need something that's repeatable.
yep,
So the games where I did have like a Ferris on board and a Wool on board, I found I could never lose against 13. So that was the main reason I played in there. And even though it's only a one of being able to have the Bosch, even though it's taking a damage against 13, it's
yeah.
worth it to guarantee the Wool in play that early.
Well, and these multicolor decks are such good homes for these multi-element cards, like the Bosch, like the Wool, like the Fury and the Zidane. These cards, and I noticed you added Unai too. Unai, obviously, just a generically good card. Was that also for 13, or was it? You know what? I can just pitch it for colors if I absolutely have to, and it's a great effect if I can use it.
So Une is more for the mid game or for when you haven't like fully set up. It's good in a mirror match because you can kind of bounce their backups before
Mm,
they can kind of get going. But also it's pretty good against Ice Earth when they go and like they tutor their Nero pre or their Whis pretty early with Nero. You can at least get the Nero out of play, so they have to replay it
yeah,
to be able to get their value off of Whis, which hopefully slows them down a little bit. Um, and obviously, if it lives against any of those decks, I will say that card never lives. I've
oh yeah,
played it a million times. I never untap with that card. So, it is what it is, but it kind of gets its value just by being played.
yeah. Well,
And I would say, I honestly, only even 50% of the time I ever even get the discount, like with the summons, especially
yeah.
once I swap into the Amaterasus. You just don't always have the summons there, but it's still fine at 6 CP.
Yeah, no, that's a card that I've seen one of two things happen with it throughout this, meta so far. Is that either it's played and it does what it does and then it dies, or it is actually resolves a summon once and then they just win because you're just getting such insane value of, or gosh help you if I've seen some decks with like activation, like someone using like the 4 CP starter Rosa. All right, get a summon, reactivate, get another summon. You're like, all right, well, this game's over because they're just gonna do whatever they want now. So yeah, no surprise that card gets the hate it does. So now that you've played through this tournament, obviously you came in first or you won, you split, however you want to say it. Can't ask for a much better result than that. Is there anything you would change from this list? Is there something that, this card just actually isn't working the way I thought it was, or are you like really happy with where it's at right now?
I'm really, really happy with my list. Now, I did tailor a little bit based on kind of what I wanted to do in this event, how I play, and kind of what I just thought I would see at the event. So kind of shape it to the meta you want. I would say there are probably somewhere between 5 to 8 cards that you can really kind of fill with in the list, and kind of do that for your personal meta. But I would say a large portion of the deck is pretty locked in. I think some of the most flexible slots are the summons,
Yeah, makes sense.
obviously besides Sildra, but
So
but
with
yeah.
and I'm glad you touched on Sildra because one of the things I wanted to ask you too was in multicolor decks like this, it seems like you have a lot of success. I feel like anytime I've tried to make a deck like this, I brick myself constantly. Like sometimes I don't know how other soiree players seem to always open like Amber Shinju because sometimes I'll open 5 different colors. I'm like, discard, pass, I guess. So what are you looking for in an opening to get set up? Obviously, Sarah is a great one because then she can go make Princess Sarah. So what are you looking for in an opening? What color do you make Princess Sarah? And what do you search off of Sildra? Those are your 3 questions.
So I'm gonna answer it in a different order just because
Sure,
it'll
by
make
all
it
means.
easier for me. Princess Sarah is wind. It was never
Okay.
anything other than wind. Princess Sarah is just always wind. We don't really have a wind backup in the deck, so it's only Tyro and
Ah,
Shantoto.
yep.
And the game plan is to actually not ever play them.
Really?
The game plan is to have four other backups and then just kind of leave that last slot open. That way, if we, get to the mid to late game and we're double drawing backups, we have something to play.
Hmm.
Ideally, the Tyro or the Shantoto at that stage. But hopefully, I don't ever have to play it before then. So obviously, any hand that has Sarah in it, we're keeping.
Yeah.
Just almost regardless, even if we don't have a water.
Oh, wow.
But we probably do. There's a good amount of water in the deck. Hands with Sildra, just Sildra, are a little bit more questionable. So I didn't have a single game in the entire tournament where I was not at four backups, four Warrior of Light on turn 3.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the deck is very consistent. Being able to sometimes you do have to aggressively play out Arc to dig for that card that you need to be able to search and get what you need going. Sometimes you do have to turn one Sildra, but usually I'm actually mulling a hand if it's just Sildra is the only thing I have in the hand.
Gotcha.
If I have Sildra and one other backup, like Sildra and a Kryl, I'll keep, even though, you can also search for the Kryl off of the Sildra.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have one other backup, it will then go get you your Sarah, right? So if you have one backup in Sildra, you can get to 4, right? Because Sildra gets effectively 3, because it can go get Sarah and the class 4 Moogle.
Yeah.
So as long as I have one other backup, we're at 4 backups and we're good.
Nice. That's very interesting. Yeah, I think that's the first time I heard someone say out loud, "Oh, I purposely don't go to 5 because I'm trying to keep that slot open." I'm assuming the Moogle covers your fire CP for any of that other stuff. That's really impressive if you can do that without needing the Tyro or the Shantoto. I know that's a very common, I don't think misconception is the right word, just thought that, oh, well, you need some backup Cosmos Chaos Tyro that produces everything. So if you can make that work without that, like, props to you, man. That's impressive. That's very impressive. So I have to ask you about this new Zidane because I know I've seen you in the past. Was it Portland? There was some stream I was watching you or casting you or something, and you were into the Windfire Zidane, Chocobo it back, the Zidane, the mill one, and you're ripping cards and he attacks in right away. How do you like this guy compared to that one? Obviously, this one's multi-element, so maybe he fits here a little better, but just how do you compare those two cards?
Yeah, so honestly, it is 100% the multi-element. Being able to tier this card off of Bosch is actually probably one of the most key factors. So the matchups where Zidane is good, Bosch is also good because he's also getting you a card and developing you on board. The matchups where Zidane is bad, where you don't want to be aggressive, Bosch is already bad, so it's fine. But any matchup, Ice Earth in particular, is a pretty core reason why both of those cards are in the deck. Being able to early turn Bosch, go get the Zidane, and hopefully play out the Zidane the same turn, and really start threatening them for some very annoying mechanics. I played against an Ice Earth player, and I did exactly that. And it was right after he had tutored his Weiss, and I was like, okay, we'll get Zidane. We looked, there's a Weiss. He draws, I attack, there's another Weiss. Let's get him out of here. No. And honestly, if your Ice Earth opponent doesn't ever play Weiss, it feels really, really good. That deck loses half its power without a Weiss in play.
No, that's huge. That I've thought that about Ice Earth often too. That technically the Unaleska isn't like a good trade for them in the sense that it's costing them 3 and it's only costing you 2. But obviously the added value comes in when Weiss and Biblos and these things hit your board as well. But oh man, getting 2 of those, I can only imagine the look on that player's face when you did that. Just like, okay, how about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly what you're saying is true. And particularly for this deck, because we're playing the way that we do, even if we do get the Tyro out, that's getting frozen every single turn. Right? It makes it exceptionally difficult for us to play our Warrior of Light, and if we can't get our Warrior of Light online, our whole engine just kind of gets stuck in the mud.
No, that makes 100% sense. So I have one last question about the deck before we move on to the day, and that is this Ferris, because Ferris, Man, that was when it was released, I remember there was a lot of buzz about her. A lot of people thought this card's incredible. And then it seemed like she just didn't show up much. And the people I talked to who did play her felt, I don't know, this card just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of eh. I don't know if it was the card itself or she didn't have the support. I'm still very partial and I love the old Opus 12 multi-element legend, but I haven't seen that in a very long time. How do you feel about Ferris? Was she a key part? Was she like, she's the star of the deck? Well, tell me about Ferris.
Ferris is probably in the top 3 best cards in the deck. If not, actually, like sometimes debatably better than the Warrior of Light. Warrior of Light just being a free play is good, and just having Warrior of Light on its text. But like Ferris is our way of controlling the board. It's our way of doing everything. I pretty much never pitch a Ferris unless I have to. It's just one of those cards I always want in hand. It's another reason why I really want 2 Bosches in the list, to be able to get us to damage 3. Ferris before damage 3, unless you're against an aggro deck, I'm just not playing it.
I gotcha.
But against any deck, Ferris at damage 3 feels insane. Effectively a 1 CP 7k that threatens exploding the board every turn, that also tutors you, whatever you really need. Because it tutors so much of the deck, it just adds so much consistency. It's really, really impressive, and definitely credit to Viridian. We were talking about that card for a million times long before Warrior of Lights, and he was always a big proponent of that card, just being like, no, this card's insane, it just needs its right time to shine, and he was definitely right.
Yeah, that makes sense. There was one match I actually saw it do really well against Wind, and it was just this interaction you maybe wouldn't normally think of, where the opponent had a Bismarck, but they realized if I try to ping these down, I actually just die because the Ferris will like revenge kill everything. It's like, that's surprising. I'm not used to having to like worry about that.
Yeah, and I may be jumping the gun going to some of the games here, but one of my games was against ninjas, and just to be able to buy me time, I just played out a naked Ferris and just left it out there, and my opponent kind of couldn't do anything about it. He's not going to throw 3 edge ninja stars at it just to have his whole board explode too. So it bought me a lot of time just to play 1 forward, and then gave me time to develop my backups. And
we call that bad ninjutsu. He throws the stars and it comes right back into his own face. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so one more question that I just thought of too. Was there ever any, were you ever tempted or incentivized or thought about putting in any of the other Warriors of Light? Any of the Bartzes, or maybe Ingus, even though I know he's got some old cards? Or were you like, nah, did you never even look at them, or the Crystal Package or any of that stuff?
I definitely looked at some of that stuff. I tried the Bartz 4-drop. I feel like he needs a lot of synergy to make him really work. Same thing with Soul. I think those cards are powerful. I think some of the cards you have to play to make them better are not powerful, and that's the problem. I also tried the Light Bartz. He was fine. Honestly, the only time I ever really wanted the Light Bartz was when he was in the break zone, which just meant I didn't care about the card, and it wasn't worth having another light card, or just that was the only light card at the time. It wasn't worth having a light card with so little upside, because like on a naked board, it doesn't kind of claw you back into the game, and you can't pitch it, so you're kind of just stuck with it.
Well, it sounds like you said, you made the Lena really shine, which is cool, because that was always such a cool card. It definitely got overshadowed by like Neo X Death and Opus 12 is like, oh, the big, kind of boogeyman light dart card. And yeah, I think a lot of people too had to having to wait a whole turn, but Luna's saying, hey, no more waiting, Lena. You go right to the front of the line, my lady, this way.
Well, I think a really big part of Lena getting better as well is that forwards are more powerful at earlier costs as well. So being able, a card, especially because like something that's multicolor, like Zidane is powerful, but he's powerful because he's multicolor. He's kind of difficult to play. But being able to cheat him out for only 2 counters off of Lena is very, very, very strong, because it's just like, they were expecting you to get something infinitely less overwhelming at that stage for only 2 counters. But if one of your summons is a Lena and a Zidane and the other one's a Furion, you just, I mean, you're wrecking your opponent's hand, you're drawing cards, you're setting up a terrifying board, and all at the cost of like very few counters.
Fantastic. No, you said it all, sir. Well, let's jump into your day. So if I were to guess, you said 24 people. I'm going to say 4 or 5 rounds. Is that correct?
Correct. 5 rounds.
Excellent. So who did you face first, or what was the deck you faced first?
Yep. So I played against a person. His name was Christian. He is from Florida. He was part of Gamers Command. So he was on I believe it was the exact same list that was posted in the top 8. He didn't make top 8, but another Gamers Command person did. So there's a soiree list there. And I'm pretty sure it was that exact list. Kind of in the early game, he started, he kind of missed a backup. I think he didn't get like Lexa out for a little bit. He was kind of stuck on like 2 or 3 backups for a while. And I definitely developed a lot faster than him. The deck has Sildra. It's a little bit more consistent. But as soon as I got to 4 backups, I played Warrior of Light. I played a Fusoya after that, which was really, really good against the Soiree players because I think at that point he had played a Tyro and I bounced that to hand. And then like a turn or 2 later, he played it again. And then I played Une and bounced the Tyro to hand and just, pretty much keeping him off those backups, making him have to reinvest in them for quite a while. Buys you a lot of time, and kind of like what I was saying before, our ceiling is way higher than their ceiling. So like he got to a board where he had like a Shadow Lord, an Adele, a Merald, a Vesvia, and I had Refia and Ferris and a bunch of Warrior Lights, and Refia tucked the Adele. Ferris blew up the rest of the board. Ferris attacked, killed the last bill on the board, and that it's kind of hard to come back from getting 4 guys wiped and also your opponent having an equally powerful board. So, and I think at that point I was at 5 cards in hand. I think he went for a Shantoto and I had an Amaterasu.
Nice. Very nice. I'm assuming, too, that's a really good matchup for Refia in that normally Soiree is known for, punishing EX burst. So being able to say, nope, I'm going to choose what's on top of your deck. You're not going to just get this random... Did that come up in that match?
Absolutely. I think I put 1 Adele in damage, and I put a Merald in damage. From the Merald was from Fusoya, and I think the Adele was from Raffia.
Nice, fantastic. All right, well, sounds like you had a pretty good time there. What about round 2?
Yep. So round 2, I played against a local. His name's Ricky. Really great guy. He doesn't usually play this game, but he had Ice Earth, and he plays a bunch of other card games with me. And he's he is actually able to develop pretty well in the early game over me, and I just kind of fumbled on a few turns. However, exactly what you were talking about before, where he had Yunleska and he had Weiss, and I didn't really have anything else going on. So what I did, because I needed to be able to have my backups on my turn, so I just left 1 backup open, waited for him to activate Yunleska, and I used Kuchulain 2 turns in a row to blank Weiss. So it's like, okay, so you're stalling out the early game, but you're not really getting any value from it. All he was doing was making us discard cards, and that's not a big deal. It's the freezing of my backups that's a huge problem. So as soon as I blanked the Weiss, it's like, okay, we both pitched a card. I don't care.
Yeah. I'll draw back faster than you will.
Yeah, and he hadn't played against Warriors of Light yet, so he attacked and ended up playing me a damage 3. And as soon as that happened, I played Ferris, blew up the board, kind of had all my stuff going, and he was on the back foot, and the game was over in a couple turns from there.
Yeah, Ferris made me eat those words.
Other than that, it just kind of worked how I needed it to, as long as I kept my backups from getting frozen. That was all that really mattered.
Gotcha. Oh, that's what it was. Did he have Robel and the crystals in his list?
Okay. Yep, it was the exact same list from Florida.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know if you've ever played that list, but that's something I've experimented with, taking out Robel and the crystals, because the crystals to me are just always so awkward. But Robel is such good, like, just direct removal, which the deck I felt really lacked when he wasn't in there. So I almost felt like, man, I feel like you have to put like Robel and some crystals in, because it just doesn't have a whole lot of get this thing off the board right now if you don't have him in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the flexibility of Robel hitting both forwards and monsters, and then also the fact that it's a must answer forward because you're just recurring the value.
Yeah.
I had my own spin on an Ice Earth deck that I actually was almost like 50% to take to Florida until like a couple days before the event. And yeah, it's like I definitely think Robel needs to stay in those lists. Just, I mean, until we get something else that can kind of just delete something off the board,
Yeah.
the crystal backups are almost like a necessary evil.
Yeah, fair enough. So that was round 2. Round 3, what are you facing this time?
Yep. So this time I played against another local, Severo. He was playing on. He's got a very interesting brew. It's a avalanche brew, but he's actually using the 3-drop Barret.
Oh, really?
The one that, yeah.
Huh.
So using that in conjunction with the Jesse backup, so the Barret can kind of come out free.
Yeah.
He's got some of the avalanche backups that break themselves. So then you can activate Barret, breaks like anything on the board,
Huh.
and then untap it with Yuffie, because he's also running 3 Yuffies to both be able to use the special and also untap his board so he can reuse those effects. And unfortunately, like, the early game just doesn't matter for us unless you're attacking our backups. So I just developed, I took a few hits and then kind of took over the mid game. And there was definitely a certain point where I just had a critical mass of huge dudes in play, especially in conjunction with having an Arc and a Warrior of Light in play. He can only remove so much stuff. When we're drawing a card off of all of our stuff we play, it's not that big of a deal to lose anything.
Interesting. I always, the like the meta nerd in my heart, when I hear that the Avalanche, I'm like, that's not how you play Avalanche. You got to do this and wedge and blah blah blah. But it's always cool to hear someone have a unique take on it. It's like, actually, this Barret card's kind of cool. Like, if he wasn't called Barret, like if that was some just unnamed app, we would play that in a heartbeat. What an amazing card that would be in that deck. But of course, most people don't play it because it's Barret. So that's really cool to hear him do that. Speaking of Yuffie, I don't know if that was the only time you saw her. Does that card give your deck any trouble because you can't target her? Or do you have some instant responses to her? Obviously, Amaterasu works, but...
So Amaterasu works, but I actually never played Amaterasu against her. There are 2 other cards that are fantastic against Yuffie, and it actually came up in the next match. But yeah, when I was actually against ninjas, so of all things.
Round 4. All right, tell us about ninjas.
But yeah, so against ninjas, specifically for the Yuffie, once I kind of established my early game plan, which was my early game plan was, I don't care what my opponent's doing. I threw out the Ferris and I got my face punched into 6 damage. But I developed my backups. Once I had my backups online, I was holding Cuchulain's in hand. And Cuchulain is probably that premium answer against Yuffie, because they just play out a Yuffie, you just Cuchulain it, now you don't have to worry about, you got a whole turn to answer it. But so I think I actually was developed. I didn't have to Cuchulain it. I think I Cuchulained a Sukinawa just so it didn't have haste and unblockable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then once I was developed, I had a Refia on board, and Refia is actually that instant speed answer for Yuffie. And so I actually just waited for my opponent to attack. He forgot about Refia. I just went ahead as soon as the trigger went on the stack, centered to the bottom of the deck, and the game was over.
Remind me, with Refia, is it the dulling that does the removal, or is it when they activate that's removal?
It's dulling, yeah. So you can, if you have 4 Warrior of Lights, you dull 4 of them, and you can put something on bottom. You can only use it once per turn, but you can use it on each turn.
Okay, and it's the activating at the start of your attack phase that draws a card. That's the one limited to your turn, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it activates all Warrior Lights you control at the start of your attack step, but in addition, if you untap 4, you draw a card.
That's what it is, okay.
Yeah, if you can untap 5 or 6 or something and you draw a card, but if you only untap 3, you don't.
No card draw. So. But that is good Yuffie spot removal too. Well, and Wool, Yuffie was like such a beast in Opus 18, but Wool alone having first strike, saying, hey, unless you like Doom of the Living me on the attack, I'm just going to block you and kill you. So get out your Godo, I guess. I don't know. You're hosed.
Exactly.
Well, nice done. But, sounds like that smoke bomb didn't give you too much trouble then.
I mean, it was definitely a little scary because I was at 6 damage, but I definitely did feel in control even though I was at 6 damage.
Nice. So one more round?
Yep. So
Round
final
5.
round was against Hunter. We kind of played pretty quickly. I had actually not really played against the 6 deck that much, and he hadn't actually played against Wolves that much. We kind of played a quick little game. He ended up winning, and then we actually were just like, let's go grab food while we wait for top 8 to start.
Yeah.
So we just ran and grabbed some local gyro and came back over just in time for top cut.
Were you taking that match like super seriously, or were you like, well, we know we're both guaranteed, let's just kind of like, you weren't really paying much attention, or like how did 6 do against you? How did it beat you or whatever?
Yeah, so I never he hit both of my Shantotos fairly early in damage, which is pretty relevant. Very, very relevant, especially considering that deck doesn't have Amaterasu.
Yeah, he doesn't have Amaterasu.
I stumbled on some of my early backups, so that was one of the slower games where I developed, so I didn't develop until turn 3, and it just he had his lock. He developed a bunch of backups. He had the Edgar Sabin, and he kind of established board. I was able to eventually remove that board, but he had more card advantage at that point than I did. I really needed a Shantoto or a Hecaton, like one turn.
Yeah.
Both of them eluded me that game. Also no EXs. I was just like a little unfortunate. So
Yeah.
but like I was saying is I was taking it seriously. I was mostly looking at it as like a scouting match of like, okay, what all is in your deck? What all do I need to worry about? Because there's a good chance we may have to play in top cut.
Yeah.
Hopefully we wouldn't have to play till finals, but
that, just looking at the cards in both those decks, and I'm very familiar with the 6 deck, I've played it a lot. That one definitely seems more up in the air, that it kind of depends who draws what at what time, because he does have a lot of removal with the Sabin and such. But then again, if you get out something like the Wool, like that deck kind of struggles to deal with bodies that are 9k and above. Like 8k is the sweet spot. It can pick everything off in the world for that. Did you ever, that made me think of it just now, did you ever have an instance where you Hecatoned the board, but you had Arc and like Ferris out, so they were all big enough to survive, but then Ferris goes, anything that's left?
Yes, yeah. So I think I only did it once at that event, but in Florida I did it quite a few times, where it's just like I have an Arc, I have Ferris, I have a Wool in play. We're gonna Hecaton, and this is definitely going to kill your whole board, and my board's still good.
Your 9Ks are fine. Well, so you went then 4-1 was your final Swiss record?
Correct.
Very nice, very nice. Congratulations. So then you move on to, after you get a tasty Euro, hopefully help satisfy you, you move on to Top Cut. So that would be quarterfinals first. Who did you face in the quarterfinals?
So I actually played against, it's not too much of a surprise. Half of the 3-2s make it in. And so obviously if you beat someone and you're 4-0 or 5-0, they're going to have good tiebreakers. So I played against my opponent from the second round, Ricky, again, on Ice Earth.
There it is. Oh, okay, so this was a rematch from earlier.
Yep, so that was a rematch. Game 1 went fairly... That was the game where I actually played the Zidane and took 2 Weisses out of his hand, like very early on. And that game was... He eventually got his third one, played it, I removed it, and then I just didn't have to worry about a Weiss for the rest of the game. And I genuinely think that matchup is almost free if Weiss is not in play. But as soon as Weiss is in play, that matchup becomes very troublesome. Game 2, he did get the Weiss in play very, very late. He had a terrible start. I was very, very developed, and it didn't matter. I had put him to too much damage. He had Biblos in play, he had Weiss in play, he had Unileska. I had one turn to draw well, and I drew double backups, and I could play it, but it didn't do anything. And then my board was locked down again, and I was getting attacked, and the game was over. Like I had full control over the game, and then within the course of 2 turns, I both lost it and lost the game.
Wow, it turned so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Ice Earth can definitely, because once they've established their control, they can just really just turn on the heat, because everything's your whole board. You can't do anything, right? Like, what are you gonna do? Draw 2 cards? It's like, unless you can play that exact card, you're then stuck in this perpetual loop of, now you have 2 cards in hand. You can't play them because all your backups are frozen. And especially in a multicolored deck like this, he's leaving like my wind backup open, and that's
Right.
it. And it's like, okay, cool. I can't play anything.
Yeah, the
And
Ice Earth
then you're
deck.
gonna make
Oh,
me
good.
discard 2 cards. My whole board gets locked down again, and I'm dead.
Yeah, that the
Um,
Ice Earth loop is so interesting that, like you said, so you draw 2 for turn, and if you can't use them, usually you're pitching 1 to Scale Toad, boom, that's a trigger Vice Biblos, then they'll pull the last one out, Unileska, trigger, 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 and then you just repeat that ad nauseum. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen someone break that loop once it's like fully established and like, all right, I got you, I've locked. Other than, like you said, sometimes, oh, I actually drew something I can play, so now you can't get the discard triggers off of me, but very difficult. So now so you're tied 1-1 then, so you go to the big third round. I'm assuming, do you remember if you went first during these rounds or if you went second or?
So we played higher seed had option.
Okay.
So I went first in all of the games because I was second seed under
Gotcha.
Hunter. So so the final game I set up super quickly. He kind of stumbled, and I bounced his either Tiro or I bounced his Tiro twice, and then I bounced his Nero once. So
was it something else? If it's the list I'm looking at, he doesn't have a Tiro. Was it Iridia maybe? Or a Toto?
Maybe it was Iridia. Maybe it was just actually the Nero or something. I just know I bounced backups on him all day long, game 3, and he was just struggling. It was it was very, it felt very rough because it was just like, there's not much you can do. You have no backups. I remember there was a point in the game where he had 3 backups, and then there was another point in the game where he's sitting on 1 backup. And I'm like,
wow.
Feels pretty good for me on this side of the table where I have 4 or 5 backups and you have 1.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Awesome. So it sounds like that last one, was very much in your favor. So you played that deck a lot, and obviously I guess it's kind of on my mind too because it did so well in Florida. Do you think that is kind of a toss-up matchup going against Ice Earth with Warriors of Light? Do you think you're favored, it's favored? How do you view just that matchup in general?
So I do think I have some tech cards in my deck specifically for that matchup. I still think it is kind of a toss-up. Just like I was saying in that second game, I had the exact same situation happen in Florida against Oki, where I essentially had the game. It was mine to lose, and he found a way to make me lose it, regardless. Because it's once you kind of put that deck against the wall, once they have 3 damage, especially Biblos is horrifying. And if you stumble even the slightest bit on that finish line, they're just going to keep you locked down and take the game back over.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened in Florida, and that's what happened in game 2 against Ricky. I was just lucky to get the third game. I wouldn't say it, if I am favored, it's very minutely.
Gotcha.
I think it's a pretty close to even matchup, though.
Nice. I always enjoy watching those too because it's nice to see, okay, well, it kind of matters who draws what in what order, and it's not, well, this deck's just going to stop this deck because, etc. Well, all right, so that had to feel good then, like, whew, all right, we made it through that. On to this would be the semifinals, top 4. We know you take on Hunter in the finals. Who did you face in the semifinals?
Yep. So this was against I don't remember his first. I think his name's Khalid Brownwalker.
Yep. The ninja guy, right?
Yep. So we played against ninjas again. So this is the same guy I played in Swiss. Same kind of reasoning, right? I played against him with a good record. I was like his only loss. He's gonna make top cut, so kind of makes sense. But yeah, it was interesting to have the same kind of matchup again. I knew what to kind of expect out of his deck. This time I didn't get quite pushed up as much against the wall, but general same game plan. Both games. Game 1 kind of went more just in my favor. Game 2, however, I did hit 4 EXs, and they were one was damage 2, and then I think it was 3 and 4. So it was the first one I think definitely bought me like into the game really hard.
Yeah.
I think the second and third were probably overkill, but I mean I wasn't going to complain about it. But like, because I remember one of them was a Kuseth, and I was like, I genuinely have every card I ever want already. I don't know what I need. But so that definitely helped in game 2. But game 1, the same kind of stuff, whereas you want to stop the ninjas as much as you can, just stall them. And once again, just trying to get an early Ferris out just to wall him up, and hope to prevent, just an onslaught of attacks.
So this one you got 2-0, 2 games in a row?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll ask you a few questions about the ninjas too as I'm looking at this list. First of all, your deck seems very well positioned to deal with this. I'm looking at like all these bodies, or most of them, are so tiny. So even a wall ping can remove them. Like you said, I'm sure Ferris can blow up this board. And we saw this deck have success at Florida as well. Amethyst, I think, was running it. And I know that's like her favorite deck, and she just runs all the time. And I have to admit, I kind of blew these ninjas off like edges from Opus 11. It's just outdated now. But they're clearly having success. What about them do you think gives them that edge? Is it just the Yuffie? Is it she's that strong? Or do you think the rest of it is actually strong and maybe it was slept on? Like, since you've played against it quite a bit this weekend, why do you think this deck is still successful?
Yeah, so I think it's fairly adjacent to the power level of the FF6 deck. So the FF6 deck may draw more cards, but its cards are so much cheaper due to edge. Mm-hmm. So the big thing that Khalid mentioned is he would try to go second, have his opponent like hopefully play out some backups and pitch some of their removal, and then he would also hopefully increase his chances of drawing edge as well. But once he did that, he just kind of explodes onto the board. I know his quarterfinals match was against a friend of mine, and he was on Ice Lightning, the exact same Ice Lightning that Chris Lopez had, and he just played a ton of things on turn one, and his opponent couldn't do anything about it. I think their entire match took maybe 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was over and done before. Like, I think we were still in game one of my quarterfinals match, and they were done.
Wow.
Yeah, so
it's still just flooding the board basically and just saying, "Hey, answer this."
Yeah, it's very consistent. All the ninjas you're playing are just so cheap, right? You have edge, then you can play Mana. That's only 2 CP for a tutor backup. And then you get to go draw something, and then you go get Yugiri. You play Yugiri, go tutor another one. Oh, look, we've got like 4 ninjas out already.
Yeah,
and it's turn 1. It's like, how do you have so much in play? And Edge has 4 counters on him. So it kind of works like Sabin does at that point, right? Once it has 4 counters on it, you're just like, oh, you played something, it's dead.
Yeah, you have to kill it before you commit if you commit a forward, it's just going to die. So I think Yuffie for 4 instead of 5 has got to be pretty nice too, that you could just pitch 2 cards for Yuffie and then let her go to town. Interesting.
Absolutely. And a relevant thing against my deck that he has in his deck is the ninja backup that destroys backups.
Yes.
He used that in all 3 games that I played against him, and that was a big reason of like kind of slowing me down some, because there was one game in particular where I went ahead and played Sildra because I didn't have a Warrior Light in hand.
Yeah.
But I was at 4 backups, and he was like, with the Sildra on the stack, we're gonna go ahead and get rid of one of those backups. And I was like, yep, you are.
Yeah.
Now I'm sad. Not getting a Warrior Light now, though.
I ran that back up in my Fat Chocobo list, the forward Fat Chocobo that can play the 2 costs for free. And when I was running it was so huge, especially against things like Soiree or Mannequins. And someone had put down the color fixing Mannequin, and then I broke it. He just couldn't even play the game anymore. It's like, I was kind of anticipating that thing being around. So yeah, that ninja is very potent.
Yeah, against Soiree, you can even break a backup to prevent Vesvia from drawing a card, or Merald and all that stuff. So that can get really tricky and be very powerful. And I'm sure, as the general breakdown of the tournament was, there was a sizable amount of Ice Lightning, a sizable amount of Soiree, and about 5 people playing 13 as well. Okay. So everything else, I was the only Warrior of Light player, and then everything else was either a one of or a rogue deck.
Gotcha. So before we move on to the finals, since you mentioned it right there, I'll ask about Ice Lightning. I don't know if this is a deck you have played or just... I have to admit, I was surprised at how much it showed up at Florida. I don't know why, because obviously it had a big boost in Opus 18, but a lot of times too, when a new opus comes out, people tend to just like forget about what just was and move on to the next thing. So I just assumed everyone would move on from it. But there is a lot of it. Supposedly it has a very good matchup against 13. I don't know if that's why it was so popular. Like, is that the reason you think it showed up so much, or is there something else to it?
So yeah, I really like Ice Lightning in the current format. I think it gets to do some of the same things that Ice Earth gets to do, but also gets to be a little bit more aggressive. So you don't have to kind of thread the needle like you do with Ice Earth. I do think Ice Earth is a pretty tough deck to play because you're just kind of always on the back foot until you get to that
Yeah.
Lock scenario that I talked about. And so some games you're just looking to deck out your opponent because you're just stalling.
Right.
Ice Lightning can just get in there and kill them though. So I definitely think that is a huge upside for Ice Lightning. I find it's just a fun deck to play in general. In Florida, I played against two. I lost to one or I beat one in Swiss, and then I lost to one in Swiss. I lost to Chris Lopez, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but I beat someone else on Ice Lightning. But just being able to, the power of Weiss, like I was mentioning before with Ice Earth, so you get that plus all of the aggression from all the lightning stuff. I think it's a fantastic deck, and I think personally for my matchup against it's pretty close to 50-50, maybe even in their favor.
Yeah, Sephiroth obviously a huge boost in the lightning, and for me, Zero Miss is still just that card like, can you kill this? Okay, well I'm gonna win then because you'll never have a blocker, so good luck with that. Well, so you've cleaned up the quarterfinals, the semifinals. You're on to the grand finals. You're facing Hunter. Now, give me an exact breakdown of so did you play matches? You said you just split. Did you just not even play the finals? Okay.
No, we didn't. We had the one game in Swiss. We came back home because, like I mentioned, he was staying with me. He's like, I'm so tired. I'm like done. I'm like, you sure you don't want? And he's like, nah, we'll go ahead and go. So he came back home, and I was like, we kind of talked about it for a second. He's like, whatever, we'll just, I'm going to pick up the cloud. I'm going to try to sell it, and we're just going to split the profits. And then the thing we really both care about is the Nationals invite.
Sure,
and
which you got automatically by just getting
So instead, because he didn't get enough FF6 during the day, he decided to sit on my couch and play the Pixel Remaster.
Nice. That's a good use of time. Well, darn, I was kind of hoping to hear how that matchup went, but oh well. Well, you said you played it once, so just, I guess, theorize for me. Do you think this one is kind of more even as well, or do you think one deck has the advantage over the other?
I think it's kind of even. I think so. We both mentioned obviously also Hunter is a very good pilot, but we both talked to each other about that a bunch. Where it's like the only person I really don't want to play against in the room is you, and we're just hoping that the bracket worked out that we didn't have to see each other till finals.
Yeah.
And as soon as we both heard that, we both kind of like looked at each other and were like, great, now I don't have to worry. Win all your matches, and then like even before it had happened, even before we had gotten to finals, like in Swiss, not knowing how the brackets were gonna break out, we're like, well, if we get paired in finals, we can just split and go home. And he's like, he actually suggested it. I was like, yeah, that sounds great to me.
Fair enough. Well, that wraps up. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, just in general, I do think the matchup is fairly 50-50. I think whoever really gets established on board first is going to win. Like, I think if I ever, this is a tough scenario to get to, but if I got 4 Warrior Lights and a Refia in play, I don't think I can lose.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Whereas for him, he can establish that board, and then if I have a Shantoto, he can still lose from that situation.
Yeah, I my personal version of this deck, I do have 3 Amaterasu in there. Like, I understand it's not a 6 card, but I just, for that exact reason, because if someone looks at your deck list and sees it's not in, so literally you can't stop anything I do, I'm just gonna, the Shantoto is just too free, but I get why some people don't run it. Well, so how long did this day take? Because I've heard that before from other players that, they get to top cut and they're like, man, I'm just tired. Like, I just want to go home. Like, is it the length of the day? Is it just the intensity of the matches? Like, is it just running it all on a single day instead of the usual 2-day? Give me some thoughts on that. And you're a well-established Worlds and National player, so you've got to have some thoughts on just that whole process.
Yeah, so personally, I usually have like very good stamina for these things. Like I went to multiple of the One Piece Treasure Cups, which are 9 rounds instead. I've
Oh
been to
wow,
Magic VPs where you play 9 rounds of seven or
best of
60 minutes.
3, yeah,
Yeah,
or yeah, whatever it
and
is.
best of three, and it's that's a lot more cumbersome. So honestly, when I look at Final Fantasy, I'm like, this is pretty easy. Hunter obviously has done the same, but he genuinely just wasn't feeling the best that day. He was just kind of
Mm,
like he told me like after like round three, he's like, I'm just so frazzled. Like he was like, my brain's like fried and not working today. I'm like, well, just keep up the wins. That's all
yeah.
that matters. Um, but uh we actually kept it on a really really tight schedule. So the store was willing to work with us, but they do close fairly early. So we wanted to make sure that we could get through all the rounds and get everything done.
Sure.
Um, so we actually started at 1. We finished all of Swiss 5 rounds at 4, I believe. Somewhere around. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we finished right around 4, and I think we started Top Cut at 4:30.
Nice. That's pretty
And so we
quick. Yeah, if
finished.
you start at 1, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, so we kept on a very tight schedule. So it did a great job on the judge, a local Will Morris, and the store was great at working with us. Obviously, a thing that I want to know if you know or in general, unfortunately, our pricing was actually delayed.
Oh.
So it was. Yeah, all of the top 8 pricing was mailed out. It was supposed to arrive on the Friday, and on Friday it said shipping delayed.
Oh, that
So
sucks.
very unfortunate. That's especially a problem with having people come from out of state. However, the store Killer Finds it's like no worries. Square Enix is going to reimburse them the shipping,
That's good.
or send them shipping labels. But they're going to ship out all of the top 8 pricing for everybody. So
That's good.
that's going to get mailed to them. So yeah, so that's really good that they were, so flexible and willing to work on stuff like that, even in a rough situation.
Sure. Yeah, and like you said, especially if you're coming from out of town, like that doesn't feel good. What? I drove all this way and you don't have the prizes, so no, that's good. Well, I guess that kind of covers the tournament. So I just have a few wrap up questions I have for you here, and if you have anything you want to add, by all means, feel free. So we'll start with the easy stuff. Opus 19. Give me your favorite and your least favorite cards, and they don't have to be. It can be based on power level, design, art, whatever you think of. Like, what's the card you've liked
Oh,
the
I'm so
most? And
bad at this. So like I'm really good at being able to like recall specific things. But whenever it comes to like a kind of random recall where you're just like pick something out of this giant
oh,
list,
well,
is
if
like
you want to make it
almost.
easier, you could keep it to the multi elements because that's like the new hotness. So like, what?
Yeah. So a big card. Okay, that helps a lot
Okay, I
actually.
thought it would.
A big card that I really like out of the multi elements especially would be the Axstar.
Oh
I
yeah,
believe that was this set, right? Yeah.
last set actually, the fire
Was
ice
it?
guy. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, then
Hey,
I'll
that
go with.
counts. I'll count it.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with that guy. I don't think that card's seen as much play as I think its power level is deserving of. I think that card's really really strong. So that's definitely a card I really like. Another one would probably be Vayne.
Yeah.
I think everybody finds that pretty fun. Hunter's friend Dorian played a warp deck
Nice.
for the event. He was
Was it
he
like the
was the
Golbez Archfiends or just random warp or?
no just Ice Earth lightning or Ice Earth Wind warp.
Huh.
And no Archfiends. But it was a very cool deck. He got 10th, so it just barely lost out to
Mm.
Breakers.
Did you get to do
was
the Theodore, like the turn 1, turn 2 Theodore Vayne combo?
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. Yeah, so he was kind of playing people on those like rough spots of like, will they, won't they? Should I play out my hand and get Shantotoed, or should I not play out my
Right.
hand and get Theodored?
That's cool. That sounds like a really neat idea. Well, so here's one I'll just throw at you because it's more like a dual element in general. The ice water combination. So Realm was the legend. We got the Shadow Lord. He was pretty generic. And Mog obviously fits in 6, but you don't really see him outside of that. And my friend asked the other day, he's like, hey, I wanted to build a new deck. What should I build? And everything he had suggested, someone else had built it somewhere and made it work. And I said, you should do Ice Water because no one's really made an Ice Water deck. And I love the Celestia from Opus 13. Hey, your water guys can't be broken. When you choose an ice card, you get to... But, like... I don't know. I don't know if it's just lacking removal. I haven't seen really anyone use that Realm other than maybe in like a Ice Wind cast deck, but it's like, that's already great because it's Ice Wind. I don't think the Realm necessarily like makes that. Do you have any thoughts on Ice Water like as a dual element or those particular cards?
Yeah. So I think there is a reasonable power level amongst like all of those cards. There's a level of like consistency and like card draw or card value that you're not necessarily always getting back from them. So like Celestia is a good example where this card's kind of very reactive rather than being active. And with a format being so diverse, I think it's very difficult to be able to play Ice Water with cards like that. I'm sure there might be something within Ice Water that could work, but we are in a very, very diverse format, which, I mean, you see our top 8, and it's like both the Materia Cup and this one, it's like they're barely, 2 or 3 of the same deck. And that's great. I really do enjoy the current format, but I think that makes playing a card like Celestia very difficult because you want to play that against certain decks that want to do X, and lots of decks are doing Y and Z also.
Yeah.
So.
No, that I actually really like that point. I got to play it once against, I think it was Ryan, and he was playing the like Earth Lightning Black Mage Break Everything deck. So it was amazing there because it's like, haha, you can't break any of my water stuff. But if someone isn't specifically trying to do that, like it just didn't do anything beyond that. So no, really good point. Sam, those are all the questions I had for you. Was there anything you wanted to mention specifically we didn't ask about whatever, competitive season, community, your favorite FF games, anything?
No, nothing too much in particular. Just I was really happy that we were able to get one of the store championships in Georgia. I'm really happy that everybody that could on the local scene was able to come out, and really appreciative for anyone who came from out of state. Hope everybody had a really good time, and hope the event went as best as we could with the prizing delays and such. But I think the store did a great job, and I'm really happy with this competitive season. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at Nats, and hopefully at the next 2 Materia Cups I'm going to.
Yeah, hearty congratulations to you and Hunter for your national invites. Of course, good luck in any future Materia Cups or anything else you go to. Even though, okay, well, I guess I'll ask that. That'll be my ending question for you. Now that you have your national spot secure, are you still gonna like try hard? Are you gonna play this Warrior Light play deck you're really good at, or are you like, you know what, I'm just gonna play for fun? I'll play something goofy now.
So it's funny that you mentioned this because you may not know, but I actually have a history of rolling a die to decide my deck before
really?
most games. I actually did that for Florida as well. It did roll Warrior of Light.
Oh wow!
I was fighting between 3 different decks: Ice, Earth, another deck, and Warrior of Light, and I rolled that. So even with stuff on the line, I still kind of leave it up to chance. I've definitely rolled more dice for before events than not.
Wow.
So we'll see what I do for some of these other events. I definitely do feel a little bit more likely to play, like more of a meme deck or something like that.
Yeah.
I told Kyle Peters, because obviously I'm indecisive. Whatever he wants to play for Kansas, I'll play with him, since he is also qualified. So. Yeah, I'm willing to go to, I still want to go to these Materia Cups, but I'm glad I didn't go to, get a ticket for California or Portland.
Yeah.
Those are obviously very far and very expensive for me. And now that I'm qualified, I don't have to worry about those ones in particular, but,
call this
if I had infinite money or something,
yeah,
I'd be at them.
Oh yeah, wouldn't we all? We'll call this man the fate maker then, because he lets destiny decide, but clearly his hand is guiding that die as well, like Qui-Gon Jinn and Phantom Menace. He just slides the die over. No, that's fantastic, man. Well, Sam, thank you for joining me today. I always enjoy just talking to you in general, but was super curious about this Warrior Light deck. Happy to see it succeed. Maybe we'll get some imitators now. People are like, all right, Sam showed us the way. Let's show how good Warriors of Light can be. And yeah, anyone you want to give a shout out to or anything before we sign off?
Yeah, it's definitely, shout out to like everybody in the community. This is a great community. Big shout outs to, Oki and Rice and Viridian KP. Love hanging out with them. They're always a good source of inspiration and everything for the game. And just, yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, sir. Folks, if you have any questions for Sam, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Maybe you'll see him or I'll see him and respond or whatever. We'll have the deck list in the description below, as well as the link to all the decks that were there at this Georgia event. And as always, if you like what you see here, you can like and subscribe. There's a Patreon if you're interested in donating, but I appreciate you watching nonetheless. Until next time, for me and Sam Tuell, take care.